Someone who has cleared prelims will not be sitting here, right? How many first prelims people? Second? So there are, okay. So, a couple of things we will discuss. How to plan the next 14 months, right? How many days? I counted the days. Right? I just wanted to get a sense of how many days are there. So, we basically have 320 days, roughly, right? That's the total number of time that you have. Why I am talking about days and time and everything, because I believe in quantifying things. Like, when you quantify, you have a clear understanding of what you have to do, stuff like that, right? So, one is plan for next 14 months, right? This is the first agenda, right? This will have multiple things. This can be divided broadly into 3 phases, right? I would look at it from a perspective of July, where we are right now, to December, right? This is one phase for me. January to June. When is prelims happening? May 25, right? June to, when is mains happening? August 22nd, right? What is specialty of next year's mains? I think it's the least amount of time in the last so many years, right? And what happens when you have less time? Don't look at 89 days, right? The challenge is that prelims will definitely take 2 to 3 weeks. Were you able to study the last 2 to 3 weeks before the prelims, between prelims and before the prelims results? Most of you would have been in the speculative zone. I call it the speculative zone, where you are not sure whether you are clearing or not. So next year also, most likely, some of you will end up in that zone. And you have to account for 2 to 3 weeks for UPSC to declare the results. That's the usual pattern, right? And when you take out that, you are left with what? 60, 65 days? And that's gonna be really short. And I always believe that 5 days before mains also is not very productive, because the closer you get, you start having other thoughts and panic and things like that. So effectively, you have only 60 days next year to write mains, right? These important numbers are important, right? So here we have, what, 4 to 5 months, another Jan, Feb, March, April, May, 4 to 5 months out here, and then roughly 3 months out here. This is the total span of time that we have. Now, what are the things that we have to do? What all? We have to prepare for mains. We have to prepare for pre. This is the 2 things that we have to effectively have to do. As a part of mains, you have optional, you have GS, you have essay, right? As a part of prelims, you have GS and CSAT, right? So this is what you have to do. This is the amount of time you have. Now, how do we usually do? We do it in a linear manner. We think one, and then the next one, and the next one. And I think there is a significant challenge with respect to preparing on a linear way. Now, what happens is that there may be some of your friends who have qualified for mains this year, but who are not ready for mains, right? The purpose of this conversation is for you to be in a position to make the best use of the opportunity of clearing prelims next year. Prelims is a different game, but you're not here to clear prelims. You're here to secure a rank, right? You're here to secure a service. And prelims is qualifying. Whether you get 5 marks above, half a mark above, doesn't matter. But mains is not like that. Mains is about getting the maximum amount of marks, right? So, and there is also another challenge. Let's say that you qualify prelims next year. There's no guarantee that you're going to qualify the subsequent year. Prelims does not discriminate. I know people who are in top 100 ranks this year who have not qualified prelims, right? So prelims is always tricky. You are an outcome of such a trick played on you, right? So it keeps changing, right? So if you look at from this perspective, normally people prepare in a linear manner. I'll finish prelims content, then I'll go for mains, then I'll go for interview. Now UPSC preparation is a non-linear preparation mode, right? When I say non-linear, you will have to constantly transition from subject to subject and approach to approach. Is the syllabus largely common, be it for prelims, be it for mains? And even for the interview, the kind of questions that you get when you appear for the interview would be similar to or related to what you have acquired in prelims and mains, right? They ask about IR, they ask about polity, they ask about your state, your your optional. Largely the questions are same. So the content aligns across three phases: pre, mains, and interview. The challenge that you have is that the sources for each of this is not limited. If I take any subject or if I take any phase, it's multifarious, right? If you take polity as a subject, obviously Lakshmikant is the most popular choice, but is that the only choice? No, it's multiple. And what happens when you have multiple choices? You always feel like you are feeling left out. You'll always have this apprehension that I should have done this also, especially when you don't clear. I think one of the conclusions that you may have arrived at right now is that I did not work hard enough. I should have done more revisions. I should have attempted one more question. It changes. I think it changes from people to people. But guilt would be one common underlying factor in most of the time, right? So what I'm trying to say is that you should go from a linear to a non-linear way, right? Conventional wisdom says that July to December is always for mains-oriented preparation. But your biggest challenge is that the failure of prelims will constantly remind you that you failed at prelims. And you're going to constantly go back to that in your head that, prelims did not work. And there is a pretty high chance that the closer you get to December, you will start panicking and start going to prelims, right? So that kind of concern has to be addressed. So in a non-linear manner, what we believe is that you should initially start with subjects which you have covered in prelims. Polity is a good subject. You have already done it for prelims, so you have a base. You start with something like that. You follow it up with geography. You follow it up with history. Anything that has a significant weightage in prelims which can be continued, carried forward, because you have acquired content for prelims from a prelims perspective. Is it useful for mains? Definitely. Your familiarity with respect to acts, articles, judgments, your familiarity with respect to dates, sessions, important personalities, important historical events will definitely be helpful when you're preparing for mains. So from this particular non-linear approach, I think if you go, July to August, we can probably start with polity, economy, geography kind of subjects. Why? Because there's a continuity, right? Why? Because it's more interesting, right? And when you do these subjects, what are you expecting to do? What exactly are you expecting to do? You're expecting to cover the syllabus. You're expecting to make notes. You're expecting to write answers. If you're going purely from a mains-oriented preparation perspective, right? The next 5 months is being prepared for mains so that if you qualify in June for prelims next year, you can better utilize those 89 days, right? So if you are looking from this perspective, it is both from a note-making perspective as well as a answer writing perspective, right? This is what we intend to do. Why is notes important? What is the primary purpose of notes? Revision. I believe there are 3-4 different types of notes. One is your running notes, which you usually is dictated to you, which is very bulky. Which is not only bulky, it is passive. Why is it passive? Because somebody is telling you and dictating you and you are writing it. Are you thinking? Most likely you are basically catching up with what is being said. You're trying to probably look at your friend's paper and trying to complete that. So whenever something is passive, there is always a possibility that you will not recollect a lot of it, right? I'm sure over the years you would have made multiple binders of notes, right? But how much of it do you recollect, right? So you have running notes. Now, any running notes is important because it develops a conceptual understanding of the topic that you are covering, right? This is true for people who do not have a background in the subject. Now, most of us would have done history or geography in 10th standard, and you would have gone to other subjects. Most of you would not have done polity unless you are from a BA Pol Science kind of background. None of the engineering students would have an idea of fundamental rights unless you have an interest in it, right? So some of the subjects are new. So running notes are important to develop that conceptual clarity. But the limitation of the running notes is that, one, it's bulky, two, revisability is low, and three, it may not have the specific value additions that you are required to have. Because when you are explaining concepts, you are expanding and you are defining things. You are not basically giving emphasis on the value additions that's required in each of those areas, right? So, notes are running notes, short notes. Short notes is basically a summary of whatever is your running notes, right? So, running notes would probably be 2 or 3 binders for a subject like polity. Your short notes will come down to 80 to 100 pages. What happens when you have short notes? You can revise faster, you can consolidate, you can highlight, you can do a lot of those things, right? So the primary purpose of this phase will be to consolidate whatever you have, if you have not already done. I'm sure some of you in this room has already done that. In case if you have not done it, I think the primary purpose of this phase would be to make notes, right? When you make notes, it has to be concise, it has to be relevant. I think this is very important. Some of you may have done foundation 1 year, 2 year, 3 year back, right? The biggest challenge that a veteran aspirant faces in this examination is that they do not write relevant content. They end up writing things that they have learned 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and the beginners are able to beat them at it, right? So whenever you have short notes, it has to be updated over and above your running notes. Running notes will give you the conceptual understanding, but whatever is the latest trends and developments on that particular topic has to be updated into the short notes, right? Is it time consuming? Definitely yes. But is there a better time to do this? No. Are you expecting to, because I have students who are writing mains this year who comes to me and say that, sir, mera notes ready nahi hai. And if their notes are not ready at that point of time, they can't revise. If they can't revise, they can't remember. If they can't remember, it will not reflect in their answer sheet. It's all directly connected. This is basic common sense, right? Now, sometimes I feel like saying that maybe not clearing prelims at this phase is a blessing in disguise for many people, because you may not be in the right position to exploit that opportunity, right? What is your best case scenario? You will have to clear prelims, mains, interview and get a rank in one sequence. You do not want to graduate from being a prelims failed to a mains failed or failed at interview, right? So it has to go equally. So imagine at this moment that if you had cleared to prelims, ask yourself honestly, right? Am I in a position to compete with the crowd that is writing the examination this year? I think there are more than 500 rank holders who are writing to improve ranks in this mains, right? And I think there are 1,000 vacancies, but there is only 500 seats. The competition for a fresher or a first attempter or second attempter is significantly higher. I'm not saying that you guys will not clear. You guys will clear every year. X percentage of people who attempt first time or second time or writing the first mains clears. But substantially larger percentage of people are people who are writing their second mains, third mains, who are going for a rank improvement, who are coming back after a break. These are the people who usually occupy a larger specimen of the ranks that's being given, right? So from note making perspective, you have to have short notes, and then you have to have value addition notes. Short notes are meant to be revised 10 times, 5 to 10 times, right? Value addition notes are nothing but the concise data, the important judgments, the important articles, the important examples that has to be there for every subject, right? So if you are doing, let's say, geography as a subject, you should have all the important, what do you call, data regarding climate geography. You should have all the important examples that will help you substantiate in economic or, let's say, human geography, right? So you should have short notes, value addition notes, and then you should have specialized notes. What are specialized notes? Specialized notes are nothing but a collection of certain types of value additions which are niche in nature, right? Just diagrams of geography. Why do you think toppers are able to bring diagrams into their answers? Because it's in their answers, it's in their notes, and they are able to revise it. So many a times students are not able to bring diagrams into their answers because they have not have one place where they can go back and look at these diagrams. So one of the things that you should do in the next 6 months is have short notes, value addition notes, and specialized notes for niche areas, right? It can be a diagram based notes, it can be a collection of just timelines. What are timelines? Timelines are when anything that you express chronologically on a line. Mahatma Gandhi came to India, he participated in this, he participated in this. It's a chronology, right? So imagine having a collection of chronology-based timelines, right? If you have a question on social reform movements, you can put a timeline. If you have a question on evolution of basic structure, you can put a timeline. Now, what has happened over the years is that niche value additions are being rewarded because it becomes novel in nature. The primary challenge when you write an answer is to write better than the next person or the person before you. So how do you do that? You have to bring specific content, which will be your value addition notes. You have to bring niche content, which will be your diagrams, which will be your timelines, which will be your case studies, best practices, n number of things, right? Now, you may think that 14 months is a lot of time. You keep aside the festivals, you keep aside the family meetings, you keep aside your bad days. This is not going to go so fast, right? It's not a lot of time. Before you know, this is over, right? Take this opportunity to make the best use of it. So, note making has to be as concise and as consolidated as possible. Maybe when you are making a note on a particular topic, it will take you 1 or 2 hours. How much time will it take to revise that? 10 minutes? 5-10 minutes, right? So when you take an effort to concise that note will come down to 1, 2, or 3 sides. But when you're revising, it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You cannot depend upon a topper's note because it's in their language, it's in their understanding, and most likely it's in their handwriting, which is sometimes very difficult because you don't know, because everybody has their own way of writing. You can mimic a topper's note, you can adapt from a topper's copy, you can copy from a topper's note, you can do all those things. But you cannot make a topper's note your note, right? So unless you do this, why am I talking so much about notes? Because we have consistently seen that people who secure good ranks most likely have good notes. And you go to any topper's Telegram group, they'll keep uploading their notes. It's not because it's not an easy thing. It's something that takes time, it takes effort, it takes focus, right? So note making is important at this phase. And another thing that you will probably do is that you have to do answer writing, right? Why is it important to write answers? Answer writing is a skill. Any skill gets better by practicing it. And the challenge right now is that the average quality of answer has increased substantially higher right now. When we prepared, we used to go to the examination hall and write our first answers in UPSC, right? Then test series came. Then foundation started integrating answer writing into their pedagogy. So at next IAS, I think we have a weekly test, we have a monthly test. So an average student would have engaged in multiple answer writing sessions or practice before they write the actual mains. So answer writing helps you to express what you know. Answer writing helps you to improved answer writing skill helps you to get better marks. While talking about answer writing, I think I should bring this up now because handwriting is important. If anybody tells you otherwise, don't take them seriously. Why is it important? Because an evaluator has to read what you have written. And your legibility is an important factor, right? If your answer is legible, you may have a potential to get half a mark more than the next person just because what you read was easy to consume. Right? You can't fix your handwriting in 90 days. You will not be able to do it because if you fix your handwriting in 90 days, you'll end up concentrating on how you are writing rather than what you are writing. And the primary victim of a changed handwriting is speed. The moment you change your handwriting or improve your handwriting, speed is going to dip. So if you want to improve your handwriting, I know top rank holders, including rank ones, who have improved handwritings year on year to score 30, 40 marks more. Legibility is important because it's subjective evaluation. If your answer is not legible, somebody is going to guess what you have written. Imagine, I keep saying this, that in test series, it takes us 45 minutes to 1 hour to evaluate a paper. We write macro comments, we write micro comments, we break up the marks into parts, and above all, we give that checked copy in your hand. We are accountable. And it takes us 45 minutes to 1 hour. So I assume, I don't know how it works, but I assume that maybe in a university examination or any other competitive examination, they don't have to justify their marks. They don't have to write why they have given X amount of marks, naturally, right? and they do not provide your answer sheets in RTI. None of you can get back that particular answer sheet. So it may be possible that it may be being checked in a much lesser time than how much time it takes for us to check. Maybe half or 1/3 of the time that we check a copy. Most likely, what you have learned in a year 2 is being checked in 45 seconds to 1 minute. Have you thought of it? Like, your future is being decided in every question in 45 seconds to 1 minute. People are going through that entire answer. If it is not legible, it's going to cost you, right? How do you decide whether your handwriting is legible or not? Make someone to read it loud. Catch a random person, right? Take a paper, ask them to read it loud. If they are stopping to guess what you have written, you're in trouble. If they can free-flowly read what you have written, that's okay. It does not have to be calligraphic. It does not have to be beautiful. It just has to be legible, right? So work on legibility parallelly with answer writing. Handwriting improvement is a 6 months project. It's not going to happen like this. It's going to take time and effort, right? So answer writing, how can you do answer writing? There are a couple of ways, right? See, any preparation in the next month, next 6 months, or next 1 year can be done by self-study. You can do it on your own. You're sitting in your room. You have no shortage of resources. You open your phone or you open your laptop, there's an abundance of information out there. There's no shortage of resources, right? So you can either go for a self-study based approach. Second, you can shadow a topper or shadow people who are appearing mains this year. This is another approach, right? You do whatever someone who's appearing for mains is doing in the next 3 months. Don't try to target GS and optional. Just do GS in the next 3 months, and then maybe from October, November, December, you can do optional. This is one way. So when these guys who are writing mains are writing 3 tests or 4 tests, you can write 8 because you're not having a pressure to do both GS, essay and optional, right? You're just doing GS, right? One of the ways to do that is to, let's say, pull out question papers and write those answers. Second, you can always join a test series, right? That's the second route. And the advantage of joining a test series is that you will have answers to questions which you have written that a top ranker has also written. Imagine the advantage of something like that. This year we have uploaded 124 toppers copies in our portal. You can go back to our toppers answers segment. We are able to do that because we have a substantial percentage of high performing candidates writing with us. We are a niche provider. We may not be the most popular provider, but we are definitely one of the niche providers of answer writing, right? So if you write with a good institution, you will have answers to the same questions written by a topper. And next year you can ask yourself, if this is what rank 5 did, what did I do in this question? How is what I did different from what a rank 5 did, right? So you can do answer writing through tests, right? Tests can also be of different types. Tests can be for people who are writing with you till prelims, till mains. That's one form of test. There are full year test series. Then there are mentorship programs and other things also, right? Depending upon the scale of investment of effort, investment of time, investment of money, you decide what you have to go. Our role is to suggest different ways to do this. Self-study is a good way to do this, right? But for many people, they want a benchmark to compare themselves with. Many people want feedback. Many people want a target. So they engage in programs. So if you feel you're self-motivated and you can do it yourself, you do it yourself. If you feel you want a competition to fight with, go for it. If you want people to sit on your head, come and join programs like AIM. Like, everybody has their choice of medicine, right? So PYQ. I think this is the most popular buzzword right now. How do you use a PYQ? You use a PYQ, you pick up a question. Let's say that you are studying polity in the next 3 weeks. Make sure that at least the last 5 years PYQs of polity is parallelly solved. So if you are covering evolution of constitution, or if you are covering fundamental rights, make sure that last 5 years of questions from that particular subject area should be solved in that given 3 or 4 weeks that you're doing. How does PYQs help? It gives you a sense, because UPSC has not given a guideline on how they'll ask questions. They have given you a syllabus, they have given you question papers of the past few years, and that gives an insight on what UPSC considers important. Unlike prelims, in mains, so far, there are a lot of areas which is repetitive in nature, right? Repetitive in nature means there is consistently questions coming from gender in society. Mahatma Gandhi's contribution in modern history is a recurring theme, right? You have questions on population and related issues in society. Environmental geography, especially Himalayan ecosystem and climate change, is very recurring in nature, right? Paper 2, you will always notice that diaspora is a very recurring theme, right? You will notice that government schemes and its efficacy is a very recurring theme in social justice, right? You will always notice that federalism, competitive federalism or panchayat or elections are extremely recurring. So when you do PYQs, you will also understand what kind of questions does UPSC ask, how frequently do they ask, are there patterns to it? Now, to a large extent, I can say that last year there was a question on communalism. This year, most likely, there's a question on secularism, right? They skip. 1 year world history question is asked, they skip next year, and then they go to a world history question in an alternative year. So there are certain patterns that you notice. So PYQs should be effectively utilized to understand how UPSC thinks and what kind of questions do they give importance on, right? PYQs will also help you, understand the quality of the questions that you are writing. Many a times, in our pursuit to follow whatever is online, you pick up a daily initiative, you pick up a Telegram channel which is giving you a question every day, right? I'm not blaming them, but you should be able to judge whether is this the kind of question UPSC asks. Because rather than pace, direction is more important. Pace can be altered, it can be improved, reduced. Direction, if you are in the wrong direction, that's a bad thing. If you are not in the right direction, that's a very bad thing, right? So if you look at PYQs consistently enough, you will notice that these questions are good enough. These questions are likely to come. UPSC will never ask a question like this. You will start thinking like this, right? So it is important to do PYQs, right? Now, other than PYQs, another way of answer writing is toppers copies, right? Toppers copies, and all these are available resources. There's nothing out here which I have listed that you cannot take your mobile or laptop and find, right? All these things are out there, right? Toppers copies, important because you know that this person has got rank 1, right? This is his copy which was written in September 1st week, 2 weeks before the examination. Most likely this is closest to what he would have run in the examination. If this guy has got rank 1 and 470 marks, there's something that's being rewarded for this. You will be able to identify the best practices in each of these answers and you will be able to emulate it into your approach. See, you will not be able to exactly copy anyone, you will be inspired by someone's way of writing. You will bring in something on your own also, right? That is why every year, I remember speaking to, I don't know which one, so I see a trajectory of trends which was adopted. Vishaka Yadav was there, I think 2019 or 20, right? She was copied by Shruti Sharma. She was copied by Divya Mishra. Shruti Sharma copied Divya Mishra. So everybody improves upon a particular approach. Now, as a piece of advice, I'll always suggest don't take top 10 ranks. It's overwhelming, right? It's too high a standard sometimes to benchmark yourself against. You don't want 470, you want above 425. I say this for interview also. 180 is a good score, 200 is a good day. 425 is a good score, 450 is an evaluator in a good mood, right? So don't be overwhelmed by some toppers copies because where they have reached is an outcome of years of writing, maybe thousands of answers being written, right? Imagine someone is in his 5th attempt, maybe in 5th mains. How many answers they would have written over the years? They would have written substantially more, right? You can't compare yourself with them. So always pick up something that's realistic for you to do. Don't start with extremely high goals because it will not be sustainable. If it is not sustainable, you will burn out, right? The last thing that you want is to burn out because maybe in the past it has happened to you because in your pursuit to aim for perfection, you will fall really short and then you will feel like questioning yourself, like, am I qualified enough to do this? Am I competent enough to do this? So pick up goals which are feasible, pick up goals which are relatable, right? So adopt toppers copies. How do you use toppers copies? You write the same answers that they have written, compare your answers with them, You collect all their introductions, you collect all their examples, you collect all their diagrams. In fact, I think 2 days back, we created a document which has 300 plus diagrams of toppers of next IAS just from GS1. Why do we do that? Because we believe that if somebody sees something, visually, it's more likely to inspire them to adopt that, right? So you take screenshots, you collect examples, and when you look at value addition, no, sometimes you'll realize that toppers are not explaining their value addition. They are just writing the name of the officer and a value. They are just writing the name of the judgment, that's it. And many of you, in your pursuit to substantiate an argument, you write a grammatically correct sentence. And that grammatically correct sentence is going to take 2 more lines, right? So when you look at a topper's copies, you're not just looking at their good answers, you're also looking at their crappy answers. Do you think all toppers have perfect answers across question number 1 to 20? Impossible. The highest percentage of marks is 45 to 47%, right? So obviously they have their bad answers. Are there anything to learn from bad answers? Obviously, how to write a bad answer, right? No, I'm not saying it in a funny manner, because sometimes you need to know that you can get away with this also, provided you have X percentage of good answers, right? Your bad answers are only bad depending upon the number of bad answers you have written, right? If I say one stupid thing right now, you'll forgive me. If I consistently say stupid things, you're going to get up and walk, right? So if you write 1 or 2 bad answers, it will be overwhelmed by the good answers that it surrounds. One of the patterns that we have noticed in people who get good ranks is that they have a threshold of 60 to 70% great answers. Nobody's going to write 100% great answers. Everybody, and most likely you will not know more than 18 questions. Almost every year, 1 or 2 questions in every paper is going to go above your head. I tell this to people who have a problem in completing their paper, that the paper is not out of 20. The paper is always out of 18 or 19. You're overthinking, right? So toppers' copies can be used to emulate their approach. Toppers' copies can be used to scavenge and extract value addition. Toppers' copies can be used to see how badly they write some answers and to learn from that, right? Can you take any toppers, any copy? Is rank more important? What is more important, right? Because if you're looking at a particular rank, you assume that that person has very high marks in that particular paper. Is that always true? There might be someone who has a math optional. I had a student who had 374 in mathematics, right? That's probably 100 marks than what most of you would get in optional, right? So sometimes a rank is an outcome of an extremely high performing optional subject. It may be an outcome of a very extremely high performing interview marks. So whenever you look at a topper's copy, try to identify how much that person has got in that subject. Because you may be barking on the wrong tree, right? You may be following the wrong thing, right? So always make sure that X percent has X marks in that particular test or copy, right? Second, I have said this enough number of times, but in the risk of repeating, always make sure that the copy has been written by the topper in the year of the exam. Right? Because I keep saying this, that if the answer that you write now or wrote last year is uploaded, if you get a rank 2 years later, it will not be a reflection of what you did. And many institutions smudge the dates. If the date is smudged, it's not from that year. There's no interest to smudge the date, right? So always make sure that you pick up copies which is closer. So answer writing and note making is your most important role in the next 6 months. This is true for GS, this is equally true for optional also. What are you expecting to do in the next 6 months, right? In the next 6 months, you also want concise notes for optional, you also want to have sufficient answer writing practice. How you do this, how you plan this out is a different story, right? But this is the output that you are expecting to have in the next 6 months, right? So what has happened is that everybody is involved in passive learning. Nobody is involved in actively writing down things, actively revising, actively concising. Now, a lot of skills can be acquired in a passive format, but in UPSC, I don't think it is sufficient, right? You need to write, you need to revise, you need to practice, you need to do this in loop, right? If you are qualifying prelims next year, the only 2 things that you should be doing between June to August is write, revise. This should be what you should be doing in loop. You'll only be able to do that if your notes are ready and if you have developed an approach to answer writing by then. These two things you have to resolve, right? Now, see, you will have multiple challenges in your pursuit to do this. One of the biggest challenges you will have right now is that you feel like you have a lot of time. And that is going to eat you, right? It's going to constantly put you under pressure, right? You will constantly compare with your roommate who was not studying hard enough, whom you taught modern history, who cleared prelims, and you are sitting here and not able to write mains. You'll be constantly comparing yourself with others, right? You will be comparing not only your competitors and contemporaries in this examination, you'll compare yourself with your cousins, you'll compare yourselves with your friends, roommates, you'll probably open social media and see that somebody is traveling, somebody is getting married, whatever, right? More time is always a recipe for overthinking. Because you have enough time, you will start overthinking and you start overcomplicating things, right? Your biggest challenge in the next 6 months is to have your focus and to have your head in your place, right? It's easier said. Anybody can stand on this podium and advise you because your personal challenges are your challenges. It's unique. It can be related to your family. It can be related to your personal circumstances. It can be financial. It can be a number of things. But if you let your challenges overwhelm you in the next 6 months, you will be in a very similar position next year this time. Probably you're sitting in front of somebody else in another classroom in another institution. The outcome will not change. The outcome will only change if you systematically prepare, if you systematically make notes, if you systematically write answers, and you work towards it, right? So, I think I had a orientation session yesterday. I had this comparison between outcome-based goals and output-based goals, right? Outcome-based goal is basically you thinking about the speech that you will give in your school when they felicitate you. You're thinking about that. We all have done that, right? You're thinking about the respect that you will get in your house, in your society. You're all thinking about the outcome of what you're trying to do, right? We all have done it at some point of time. You should transition from an outcome-based goal to an output-based goal. What can I do today? What can I consistently do tomorrow? What can I consistently do this week? Your task has to be broken down into its smallest component, right? You should have a daily target. You should have a weekly target. You should have a revision target. The sooner you have that, the more systematically you will be able to prepare. See, motivation is limited. Motivation is short term, right? Maybe when you walk out of this room, you will feel charged. By the time you get up in the morning tomorrow, you would have forgotten. You would be back to who you are. That's what happens to all of us, right? You need to create systems and processes which will help you to consistently prepare, right? That's what you should do. You should have a target for July. How many more days in July? 20 more days. What can I finish in the next 20 days that I can break it down into 3 weeks? What is my target today? What is my target at the end of this week, right? If you have targeted to finish, let's say, first 4 chapters of Lakshmikant, you should keep a test either by joining a program or by collecting questions or by collecting PYQs and keep that test as a review mechanism at the end of the week, right? You can do the same for optional, right? You can have a target for the end of the week. So maybe it is fair to say that you can adopt the next few days to create a schedule for yourself. Either it can be something that's customized according to your situation, or it can be something that's popularly running, right? Now there are multiple programs which institutions are running. If you are not in a mood to join a program, you co-opt their schedule, right? You take the schedule because these schedules have been created with a lot of research and thought, right? But you should have a plan. That plan is very important, especially when you have a lot of time, right? If you have a lot of time and if you don't have a plan, your plans will expand to fill the time, right? You will start polity and you will stretch polity for 3 months. Is it possible? It's very easy, right? You can stretch, you will not even realize it. And the irony is that people who stretch subjects are already experts in those subjects. Because when they do those subjects, they feel good, right? And they keep doing that again and again. And the mistake that we often see these days is that people try to become experts at everything. They want to become an expert in disaster management. They want to become an expert in cybersecurity. You don't have to be experts in UPSC. You need to know 20 things on cybersecurity. You need to know 20 things on left-wing extremism. You need to know 20 things on urbanization. Because that's only what you can remember. In your pursuit to develop perfection, you will try to develop expertise. You try to develop, consume too much content. What happens when you consume too much content? One, it becomes less revisable. let's say if you succeed in consuming too much content, your answers become complex. And when your answers become complex, it may go above the evaluator's head. There may be a certain expectation that the evaluator has out of a question. I don't know whether you have noticed this trend, that there are law optional students who get very low marks in paper 2. Ideally, that should not happen because they have very strong command over law, social justice, polity, social justice. I feel they write judgments which the evaluator has not heard of. They go up. People from geography complicate their geography part in paper 1. They try to not only write over the board answers, they also give too much time also. Both, a combination of both can be disastrous because when you give too much time for geography, you'll write perfect answers, but you will compensate or you will compromise society and history. So it is important to find that balance, right? So someone very nicely said that, you have both academic and non-academic distractions, right? What are non-academic distractions? That's very clear, right? Family pressure, friends, you have YouTube shorts, you have, right? I don't know whether you guys notice it, right? The kind of content that's being provided to you is customized to your taste. If you like home interiors, you get the best home interiors. If you like design, fashion, photography, you're constantly being fed with multiple things of the same concept. And before you know, it's 1 hour, 2 hour. I know you, before you going to sleep, you would have started scrolling, and before you know, it's 2 o'clock. And when you sleep at 2 o'clock, you never get up at 8. You get up at 10. And it has a cascading impact, right? So the non-academic distractions are extremely high these days. Maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a new book, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a number of things. What are academic distractions? So many sources, way too many sources, no? I have said this many times. When I left Delhi after my preparation, I had 100 kgs of book which I had to courier home. I know 100 kgs because I had to go to VRL and ask them how much is per kg, right? So how much would I have read? 5%? 10%? You're not different, you just have 100 PDFs. Right? You think you guys are different. You have so many folders to be read tomorrow, to review, to research. You'll have folders after folders with content, right? So overabundance of content is an extremely difficult academic distraction. Someone very nicely said that, there is content terrorism. There's so much of it, especially current affairs. I can think of, maybe I can write down 25 sources of current affairs right now, depending upon number of institutions, different number of newspapers, number of magazines, number of telegram channels which is summarizing for you. Can you do all these things? And you are never satisfied. Someone who is reading Indian Express is looking at Hindu with the left eye. Someone who's on our current affairs magazine has another magazine lying on the table. You're constantly overwhelmed with the kind of sources and the kind of material that you have, right? Is it limited to content? I think advice is another thing. How many telegram channels? How many YouTube videos? How many topper strategy? How many? It's countless. It's impossible for you to focus. You're not short of time, you're short of focus, right? And because you have way too many distractions in terms of content, way too many distractions in terms of sources, in terms of advice, and the irony is that everything is good. I will not say that, XYZ is inferior to ABC, right? Everything is good in its own way. But your mind is not a Google Drive. You can only consume this much content. You can only read this many number of times. And to make things worse, you have ChatGPT, you have Genie, you have a number of tools, right? The moment you give a prompt, it's churning out more content. So there's no shortage of content. There is no need to buy more things or read more things. Your primary challenge is to focus on the limited number of things that you will have to do, right? So there is academic distractions and non-academic distractions. And the problem with academic distractions is that you are even more affected by the FOMO factor, the fear of missing out, right? You have joined a course, your roommate is doing something, and you feel like, I should have done that. Is that better? Maybe. But can you do both? Definitely not, right? Do you have money for doing both? Maybe not. You're never satisfied with what you are doing. You never complete what you do. I have people who come for counseling to join courses. So I ask them, what did you do? I ask them, do you have tests left in that? Is it still pending? Finish that, then come to something new, right? There's no point, and then you'll eventually blame us that, you know, I did this and this and this, right? It's not about us, it's about you trying to pursue excellence and perfection by trying to do everything, right? I think FOMO, and there is something that's not that popular, JOMO, the joy of missing out, right? I think you should transition from the fear of missing to the joy of missing. You can't do everything. You will have to make choices, and in the next 6 months, your biggest challenge will be these kind of distractions. You will have way too many things to do. You will have way too many sources. You will have way too many advices. And every topper has different strategies, and that has worked for them, right? Tomorrow, if 10 people in this room clear, none of you will have the same strategy, right? You will have different subjects, you will have different sources, you will have different styles of writing, you will have different timings to study, you will have different things that you motivate you. So the more you look, the more you will get confused, right? So note making and answer writing has to be the primary motive in the next 6 months, right? How do you do it? You can do it yourself, you can join a program, you can form a group of people, you can do it with yourself. There are multiple ways to do it, right? People join programs because they feel that, you know, if I invest money, I'll be more accountable to it, right? That's how I joined all my gyms, right? Right? You join, you think you'll go, you'll take annual membership, you'll be feeling like, you know, definitely I'll complete this time, right? But do things which, and look at your past experiences. I always ask people that, you know, do you do a program like this earlier? If you have done and if you have not successfully utilized, don't do it again. Your chances of not utilizing is very high, right? See, the problem is that when you were attending a foundation class, you had a place to get up and go to. You had a class, you had a peer group, you had a friend who caught a seat for you. You had a place where you used to go for tea. There was a pattern, right? And when that pattern is over, you're left with so much time and too little things to do, or too many things to do, and you have so much time and you don't have anchors. When I say anchors, an anchor is an institution, an anchor is a class, an anchor is a target syllabus that's being completed in a given point of time, right? So be wary of that, right? Other than that, I think, see, if I look at from the perspective of a optional, right? Are all optional similar? No. Some are long and bulky. Some are short. Some are scoring. Some are not so scoring. Some have overlapping. Some are technical. Everything has its own. Some are very less popular. I had a student who used to be part of veterinary science, who used to be part of statistics, and all the students in the country will be part of one WhatsApp group. Less than 10 people writing one optional. Imagine, I know PSIR people can't relate to this, or sociology people can't relate to this, right? So each optional is different, and the demand of each optional is also different. If you have mathematics as an optional, definitely it's going to take you more time. You'll need to do more practice. If you have PSIR as an optional, yes, it definitely helps you in paper 2, it helps you in paper 1, it helps you in ethics. There is an overlap. So the strategy that you develop for your optional in the next few months will have to be defined on the basis of these parameters. Why is scoring important? Because certain subjects, despite of being short, are not very scoring. Why do we say something is not scoring? Because not many people have crossed a certain threshold of score, or not many people are writing it, or not many people have secured ranks from it. You know which subject you are. Maybe you chose it out of passion, maybe you chose it because you have a background in it, whatever reason, right? Now you're in that optional. If that's not scoring, I don't know whether it's rational to invest a lot of time in it, right? I always believe in the concept of ROI, the return on investment of your time. So sometimes if you realize that the optional that I'm not naming any optional because maybe some of you have such kind of optionals, I don't want to demotivate you. But logically think that, you know, is there a correlation between me putting 500, 600 hours of time and the marks that I will get? Will I get a similar amount of marks if I put 300 itself? And can I put the remaining 300 hours on GS? Can I put another 100 hours on essay, right? So always establish the correlation between effort and marks that you can get in a particular optional, right? Optionals will also have the same strategy: note making, answer writing, revision. This is basically it, and this is basically it for any examination that you prepare. Be it NEET, be it JEE, be it, this is it. this is the basic fundamentals of any examination. You will need crisp notes. You have to actively involve yourself in summarizing those notes so that you internalize the concepts. You will have to create systems to test yourself, which is your mock test, which is your PYQs, which is your toppers tests. And you will have to revise that as many times as possible and then pray it works. Right? Because despite of you doing everything, sometimes things doesn't work out. That's maybe not in your fate, or it did not align, or many a times you perform really well in test series, right? Maybe there are people out here who were toppers in mock tests, all India mock tests. Maybe you were in the top 100 rank. Did it help on the day of prelims? Maybe not, right? So there is always a possibility that there may be no correlation, but there will always be that satisfaction that I tried. I worked hard. I do not have guilt. My second mains, I watched the entire season of Suits between my prelims and mains. You do things, you do irrational things. Binge watching is a very common thing. If you start watching Mirzapur, or if you start watching any of these series, you're going to finish that and you're going to keep watching it till it finishes. And then your next 2 days are gone. So there's enough distractions and enough things. So the plan should be systematic. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the optional and GS has to be aligned, right? When I'm saying aligned, the time has to be allocated appropriately. You cannot win with one, right? If you look at the statistics of people scoring marks, in the top 100, I think optional has 280 marks in the top 100, right? That's everybody's aspiration. Top 100 home cadre, IAS. That's what most of you, maybe there's an exception for an IFS or an IPS, but most of you want a home cadre IAS, right? 280 is the average in optional. 425 or 421 is the average in GS. 120 is the average in SA. These numbers are important. This is what you're aspiring for. If I have to get 425 marks in GS, how do I come there? What are the components which will get me there, right? I have GS1, GS2, GS3, GS4. The highest marks in GS1 this year is 109. GS2 is somewhere around 128 or 129, something like that. GS3 is still 105. GS4 is 140 plus, right? So goal setting and enumerating and quantifying things are important. Write down on your board that I need to get 425 marks or more in GS. I need to get 120 marks in optional. In SA, I need to get 280 marks in optional. What do you do when you know these things are the targets? First, you look at people's copies who got that, right? How did they get that? What is the composition of their good answers versus bad answers? What is the composition of their, or what is the comparison between their subject-wise answers, right? How efficiently are they writing society answers? What are the keywords that they are using? What is the examples that they are using? What is the type of introductions that they are writing? So it has to be minutely analyzed so that you have quantifiable steps to do. If you don't have quantifiable steps to do, you'll keep shooting in the dark, right? So in the optional also, you have to make notes. We had a student, Wasim Ahmad Bhatt, I think ranked 7 last year, right? He came here and he very interestingly said that, every day he used to study and he used to spend 1 hour on his optional PYQs and 1 hour on his GS PYQs. And for optional, I think that year he got above 320 or 310 anthropology, if I'm not wrong, right? And in that particular subject, he had gone and researched over and above his regular sources. Your standard books are being referred by everyone. What happens when you're referring the standard books which everyone is referring? You're more or less light what everybody else is writing. You will have to go beyond. For every topic, you should have 1 or 2 arguments which is beyond conventionally available sources, right? I always feel when a particular source becomes too popular, it starts backfiring because everybody is writing the same set of things. So if you have your optional, or if you have your paper 2 in your optionals, go and see what are the latest research papers on it. What are the latest theories on it? What are the latest developments in it? Most likely your optional paper is being checked by a subject expert. They may be keeping track of it, right? They say this, that whenever you're writing a university examination, look at all the professors there, what are the papers that they have written, keep writing those papers in your answers. You're more likely to win because people like people who appreciate them. People like people who recognize their talent. So identify latest developments in your subject through Google Scholar, through whatever search you do, and then update that in your answers. Make sure that your examples, your value addition is contemporary along with whatever you have acquired so far, right? So you will have to, go for optional balance, Next, I think, is current affairs, right? I think this is another confusion that most people have. How do I handle current affairs in the next few months? First, decide on your source, right? I think the right newspaper. I don't know whether it's fair to say this on a podium, but I like Indian Express better than Hindu, because I think Indian Express is taking an effort, right? Because they have UPSC-oriented content, they have UPSC-oriented columns, their explainer is amazing. Whatever you follow, I think you stick to one source, you stick to multiple revisions of that, right? You stick to making value addition from that, you stick to consuming their content on a permanent basis. One magazine is something that you can adopt. We have a very good current affairs magazine, try that out. If you're confused which current affairs magazine to follow, identify one news, right? Let's say now, any particular news that you can think of that's trending now. Modi visit to Russia, Prime Minister Modi's visit to Russia. Look at how that news has been covered by different magazines. See which aligns best to you, right? Any decision that you take should be objective. It should not be because your roommate suggested, or it should not be led by emotions. It should not be done because it's, what do you call, design is good, or it's, you pick up a particular news, compare it, and then you decide, okay, this is more aligned, this is more I can consume. If you don't want to do a magazine, you can always go for daily current affairs initiatives, which are audio based or video based. I think the utility of such kind of initiative is that it's mobile. You can, there is something which is called as pleasure bundling. I don't know whether you've heard of this concept, right? Pleasure bundling is when you are trying to do two things, one you like to do, one you don't like to do, right? Like running on a treadmill and watching a video. Like you don't want to run on a treadmill, but you like to watch a movie. So you'll pleasure bundle, right? So maybe you can integrate your current affairs into your walks or into your commute, or if you're working in while doing that, right? So current affairs is something that can be integrated in that sense, right? You have current affairs programs, we have current affairs for prelims, we have current affairs for mains, we have multiple programs. So see, if you sit and try to summarize the most important news, it will take you more time. Identify someone who is doing it and leverage that. You do not have enough times to do everything. Whatever that can be outsourced, either free or paid, do that. Courses are nothing but initiatives to save your time more than anything else. There's nothing that's being provided to you that you cannot solve with time, right? Many of the initiatives, you know that if I sit and make notes, I can do a better job. But maybe it will take X amount of time more, right? I remember a very famous teacher in one of my foundation classes. So the class was going on, and the student was sitting and reading a newspaper. So the teacher stopped everything and said that what I'm explaining you in 30 minutes will take you 1 month to research. Because they are consuming multiple content and they are extracting and then they are concising it and then they're giving it in a capsule, right? So current affairs is something that if you have to depend upon an external source, if you have to depend upon external magazine, if you have to depend upon a daily YouTube initiative, depend on that because it's outsourceable. What are things which is not outsourceable? Studying, revision, note making, answer writing, these things can't be outsourced. You have to do it, right? So what you have to do, you have to do. What can be done by others, join courses. Next IAS has multiple options. You check out, right? Whatever you like, you go for it, right? So you have optionals, current affairs. Other than this, what else? What are the other concerns that you have across the next 12 months? Essay, right, okay. See, to write great essays, you have to be well-read, period. If anybody says you otherwise, it's just, what is happening to essay score nowadays is that people are writing mechanical essays. Why are people writing mechanical essays? Because they have not put effort into something like that in the past. To be well-read does not necessarily mean to be well-read in current affairs. Great essays are something which has a mix of popular culture. It has creative writing. I think this year Rank 1's essay was very popular because he started an essay with an Oppenheimer example. I don't know whether you remember that controversy, right? Creative writing and expression is very useful to score in essay, and that will come through reading. If you have a habit or hobby of reading fiction, non-fiction, I think that's something that will help you in essay. If you don't have that habit, I think you can cultivate a habit of reading essays of people who got good scores, right? Maybe once in every week, you pick up an essay of a topper who has got good scores and try to emulate that topic, right? You write the same topic. And the beauty of essay is that if you, let's pick up a topic, right? Ships are, what do you call, what was the topic? Ships are, or you do not step into the same water twice. Ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not what ships are made for. If you write that essay today, and if you write that essay 1 month from now, you'll write some completely different content. You'll never end up writing the same content. That's very rare, right? Why does that happen? Because essay brings out your feelings, your values, your expression, everything comes out. More writing, more expression, more experimentation, I think would be useful, right? Essays are good to be reviewed by someone, either it is an institution, a teacher, or maybe someone who's your friend who's well-read, maybe he's your college teacher who's well-read. Get people to read what you're writing, right? Because when people read, they'll see whether you're abruptly transitioning, right? They'll see whether you are over-explaining, whether you are just giving data. One of the things that is happening in the UPSC essays, I believe, is that people are writing extended GS answers and have stopped writing essays. What is an extended GS answer? Extended GS answer has so much data, extended GS answer has so much examples. There is no reflection of you, right? Essays should reflect your values, essays should reflect your fears, it should reflect your ideals, it should show who you are, right? So experiment with writing, read toppers' copies, read what you call content which will help you write on topics, and you will also see patterns. I think we have a great essay program by Ruchika ma'am. Every year we release something called as Essay Essentials. You will find our essay book also. Check that out. I think you will find content. See, sometimes guidance is needed best closest to certain examinations, right? So certain programs you enroll when you are very close to the examination. In certain phases you go for self-study and self-introspection, and later you take help, right? So essay is in that direction. And PYQs of essay is a good way to see what kind of themes and areas from which UPSC asks, what kind of topics are, what do you call, chosen by people who get good scores. There was a very interesting Excel sheet that was collated last year by all the people who appeared for interview. I think there were almost 300 responses in that Excel sheet. So it gave, I think it was done by one of the Telegram groups, it gave a list of choices that everybody made, how they introduced, how much marks they got, and how many points they wrote. Just scavenge on the internet if you can find that, because that will give you an objective understanding of what worked for people, right? Essay, interview also, I think, see, don't wait for interview preparation in September 2025. Your body language, the way you communicate, your confidence, your expression, that won't change overnight. Just like your handwriting is not going to improve between June to August 2025, your personality will also not improve overnight. We increasingly see candidates who are not socially confident to professionally communicate at that point of time. Because the longer you spend in this examination, the higher the chance that you're going to cocoon yourself into shells. You're going to sit in library rooms where you don't speak to people. I have students who have come and told me that, you know, sir, I'm very good at communicating, but it has to be a fellow UPSC aspirant. Then I'm very good at talking. I cannot talk to an elder person. I've never done that, right? So these things won't happen overnight. And many a times you would have been college toppers, you would have been valedictorian, you would have been speakers, but 2 times you fail prelims, no? You lose your spirit, right? I tell people that, you know, when you walk in ORN, you will know by body language whose first attempt it is, who has been preparing for 5 years. Because the longer somebody is preparing, the smile is out of their face, the body language is completely different. You'll notice this. You'll know friends who have just come from home to prepare. They're so confident, they're like, this year I'll clear, right? And then prelims happens, and then that cycle continues, right? So, though, what I'm trying to say is that there are no perfect time, right? You're constantly searching for the right guru, the right book, the right source, and then it doesn't find you. And rather than you finding that right source, sometimes it is important to design the outcomes that you want to do. And that's going to take action. That's going to take You sitting here, maybe by bad luck, but maybe by karma also, right? Because you did not work hard enough. You know who you are, right? If you have missed by a question or two, it may be because you had a certain, I had a student today who came and said that, you know, I had marked 7 questions on the questions, because I did not mark it into the OMR sheet because I was not confident, and although out of the 7 questions, 5 were correct. Sometimes you don't have that confidence to do certain things. Same applies with respect to answer writing. There are many people who are appearing for mains this year. In the last 1 month, they have not written a single answer. You may know some of them. So unless you take action, obviously the first answer is going to be crap. Guarantee, right? But for you to have that progression of improvement over the next 6 months or 9 months will require you to transition from bad to less bad to average to good kind of situation, right? So start somewhere, take the handwriting argument very seriously, right? How does Next IAS support you, right? If you are part of a foundation program, we have your tests that has been committed to you. If you are not part of a foundation program, we have programs which is facilitating your preparation. It's your choice, right? If you feel you can do self-study and prepare, well and good. But if you feel you need a peer group, you need a support mechanism, go for a program. Now I tell this to people that, you know, you come to old Rajendra Nagar and Patel Nagar and you spend so much money to stay. You're 500,000 kilometers away from your home. And you think twice before you, why have you come all the way till this place, this 5 kilometers? Because it's proximity to these institutions. It's proximity to the teachers, proximity to the material. This is the primary reason, right? When you are here, you make the best use of it, right? People don't mind paying X amount of money as living cost, but they'll always think twice before joining a course. You're here to access the best resources in this industry who will guide you and train you to crack this examination. Outcomes are never predictable, but you can always control the controllable, which is your effort. Next year, this time, you should not be in a situation where you feel that I could have done more. Your effort should be substantial, that you should have that feeling that I worked hard enough. If it was not meant to happen, it's not meant to happen. But it should not be because I did not practice enough, I did not make notes, I did not revise enough, I did not, and you will get distracted like this. You have enough and more things to do, right? I'll also take this opportunity to explain the AIM program. We are running something called as an AIM program. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's a mentorship-oriented program which is segmented into daily tasks. We have daily assignments which will add up to assessment tests at the end of the week, followed by revision tests at the end of the month, right? These are reviewed, these are evaluated, and these are micro targets, right? You join AIM or not, that's your call, right? But you can definitely take a look at the brochure because it has a great schedule, right? It will give you micro targets on a daily basis. Have a plan, right? That plan may be something that you will adopt, that may be something that you will design yourself, and stay consistent to what you're doing. And anything else, anybody who has any doubts? See, pen is subjective. Now I have people who have written articles on pen. Some people might find it silly, right? Some people, pen mein itna kya hai? It may improve your handwriting, it may improve your speed, it may improve your score. If your handwriting, if your legibility and your speed is improved, obviously it has a potential to increase score. Logical. How do you decide the right pen to use, right? What I always tell is that in a test of 20 questions, every 5 questions try a different pen. Now you have an objective comparison, right? Is this more legible? Was I able to complete this answer better? Considering that the content is same, did this one get more mark? Maybe, right? So experiment with the pens that you have, right? What else? Anything else? In the actual UPSC examination or in test series? See, you should not be worried about absolute score. You should be worried about relative score. Right? If a topper is getting 147, your score should not be below 110. If you are not away more than 15 marks away from a topper score, your score will always be above 430. Relative score is different, right? UPSC decides to scale marks in a particular subject. It's equal for everyone. Then it's a level playing field, right? Why certain subject gets more marks compared to other subjects, that's a subjective thing, right? But your goal should be in that top 5 percentile or 2 percentile of scores, right? Anybody else? I didn't get the question. Right. Running notes, short notes, value addition notes, specialized notes, right? I think I do not have the command on every optional. I had PSIR and sociology. We used to have 2 optionals, right? So I had PSIR and sociology. I don't think I'm qualified to advise on optional notes. GS and mains, we do this. This is my 10th year conducting a mains test series. We have done this multiple number of times. We have some sense of understanding of how it works. Optional is very subjective, right? Maybe I can connect you with someone from that particular option who can help you out, right? That's not going to happen. Because GS and optional classes will take 5 to 6 hours. If you add the commute and the lunch, it's 9. See, there are toppers, what they do is that during the foundation, they go home and they summarize and then they solve PYQs of that subject, right? It's going to be extremely difficult because you have to get out and go to a class. That class will be 2.5, 3 hours. Your commute to and back is at least half an hour each. And then one more class like that. For the sake of advice, I can say that you spend another 4 hours doing this, but practically maybe not. Because you don't want to burn out by starting with a 10, 12 hour schedule. You may have a consistent 9 hours, right? What else? See, anything that's worth doing is worth doing well, right? You can always put no effort and don't just go and give. But how do you expect yourself to improve? When you write, when you rewrite, when you enhance, that's when you improve, right? You can always let it be, right? If you are consistently doing your weekly class test and monthly class test across the year, it will automatically progressively increase. That's logical. So whether you want to put effort or not, that's your call. At least at next IAS, it's worth it because I think we gave merit test, merit scholarship to a lot of students in AIM because of their performance in weekly class test. So there is an incentive also, right? I don't know whether that practice is going to continue this year, but last year we had, and I think we gave scholarship to students who are doing well in WCTs and MCTs, right? So if there's an incentive, if you are looking for progression and improvement, go for it. Okay, I have a couple of questions which has come from the online live. I'll take some of them. Maybe it's aligned with some of you also, right? I have completed 60% of my mains syllabus, but I need to revise 40%, majorly JS3. May I join AIM 2025, right? In AIM, what we have done is that we have dedicated a certain amount of time for each subject. If I take polity, I have given 4 weeks, 1 month. If you are doing self-study, more or less, you will have to do that much time only, right? So if you are thinking of a program like AIM, and if you feel I have not completed XYZ subject, there is always a certain amount of time that's been allocated to those subjects based on one rationale, weightage. How much marks worth question is coming from that topic? That's our primary rationale. And how much time does it take an average student to cover, right? So we have given 4 weeks for polity, we have given 3 weeks for ethics, we have given 4 weeks for IR and security put together, we have given 3 weeks for environment, disaster management and geography. So subject-wise allocation is there, right? How do you update your notes and insert value addition, right? So if you have already made notes, I think the primary thing that you do is you search those keywords. There are 2 types of current affairs. There is a current affairs which you go from newspaper to notes, like polity. Multiple things are happening, right? Every day there is something polity-oriented news. And then there are certain current affairs which is better to go from current affairs to news, from the internet or from the news to your notes, right? I'll tell you the difference, right? If I take a keyword like cybersecurity, do you think there will be cybersecurity-oriented news every day? Maybe once in a week, twice in a month? Isn't it better for such kind of topics which does not have increased intensity of occurrence to search that particular keyword and look at what has been the developments in that? Because if you go behind, now if you search an entire year's current affairs magazine, you may get 10 things on cybersecurity. So certain content should be from the internet to your notes, and certain content should be based on regular consumption. See, I always prefer standard sources, government websites, standard newspaper sources, because you can prove and misprove anything on the internet, right? There is enough content, and there will always be someone who's disgruntled, dissatisfied with something, and there will be opposing content. Your standard source for newspapers should be your standard newspapers that everybody is consuming, also because of the FOMO factor. Because if you don't consume the same newspaper that everybody is consuming, you'll assume, or there is a possibility that you will miss up trends. See, unknown thing, question, mains. See, if you leave a page blank, it's 0, 100%, right? Even if you know a keyword in that question, write a few lines on it. Maybe you'll get a half a mark, which may be the distinction between you spending 30 years in your home state versus somewhere else. Mains marks are counted, right? You leave a space blank only if you have absolutely no idea. If it's gibberish, you have no clue, go for it. I had a student who got a top rank, and I asked him, what did you do for, there was this question, decolonization of Malay Peninsula, world history, right? Which was a bouncer at that point of time. So I asked him, what did you do, right? So he said, I drew the map of Malay Peninsula and I wrote about decolonization in general. Maybe that's why he got a top rank, right? So leave a question blank only if you have absolutely no idea. The time that you allocate to a bouncer can be substantially less, but it should never be 0. Because the evaluator may be in a flow. Maybe you have written 12 great answers. He already has a good opinion about you. And he'll probably give you 1 mark for that few lines, right? So don't undermine the potential of even a bouncer. So see, what is your risk? Your risk is not getting marks. Your risk is wasting time, right? If you don't get marks, you anyway don't have anything to lose, right? If you are wasting too much time trying to bluff your way through, that's a bad idea. But if you spend 2-3 minutes to scribble something, look at some of the toppers' copies. You will see large maps with just mangroves written. The purpose of that map was to fill that page, right? Almost all questions which the toppers don't have content, their font size are bigger. The schematics are larger, right? The purpose of certain questions is not to ace, it is to scavenge whatever marks you can get, right? Interview transcript is an insight into how UPSC asks questions, right? Now what happens when an interview is happening is that if 5 of us are sitting, everybody will have a certain favorite area, and that's bound to be there. You all have your favorite area. There are people who will always ask AI-based questions. There are people who will always ask state-based questions. So if you see a pattern of questions, I think it's always better to anticipate. If a board or if students coming from Kerala is constantly getting questions on, let's say, Sabrimala issue, right? It is better to be prepared on that. There is a pretty high chance. So transcripts are important to understand patterns. PYQs, transcripts, prelims PYQs, patterns, right? Don't blindly go and follow things. Look for patterns, try to adapt to those patterns. Right? I don't know, I can't say, right? At least the bigger institutions have solid team behind it, right? If I'm standing here, I have 20-30 people behind working this. Effort is going in. Authenticity, yes, there is no intention to deceive you. It's counterproductive for any of us, right? If we give you the wrong information, you're going to tomorrow say that they gave us the wrong information. Can there be mistakes? Maybe some people would end up making mistakes. That's not something that is in anybody's control, right? How to make notes from mains perspective. Mains and prelims perspective, I think it's thematic in nature. Mains should be made from the perspective of value addition. Mains should be done from the perspective of how you want to write introductions, conclusions. So there will always be mains oriented. I always think I should hold my tummy in when he takes the video from one side, right? How to make notes from mains perspective. Standard books for UPSC, important for CSE 2025. I think that's a long list we can share. I am doing current affairs magazine. Can I skip newspaper? I think this is an interesting question. I think newspaper reading is a habit. It's something that you cultivate. You get up, you read an editorial, you form opinions. Current affairs magazines are less likely to give opinions because it's mostly concise, condensed things. But when you read, but the problem with editorials is that, if something happens, there will be editorials on that same issue for 10 days. So many different opinions, right? So I think certain things, depending upon your area of interest and depending upon your potential to score or questions to come, maybe you should stick to newspaper reading along with your current affairs magazine. You can leave. So there's no hard and fast rule. If you ask, see, the data in among toppers is such that you will find someone who says that मैंने current affairs magazine नहीं पढ़ा है. There will always be someone who said मैंने 3 current affairs magazine पढ़ा है. You can always prove and misprove what you're looking for. There's enough diversity of data out there. So there is, like I said, academic distractions, content terrorism, advice terrorism is very strong, right? So you will have to decide what am I going to follow, what will I do, right? So that's more or less. Anybody has any other doubts? I think CSAT 2024 is a relative reprieve compared to last year. I think this, I know I'm offending someone who's failed because of CSAT out here. There will always be someone who's failed because of CSAT. But I think, see, if you are afraid of CSAT, if you have consistently failed at CSAT, and CSAT is something that's more active, so maybe you can integrate CSAT into your day, right? Maybe 15 minutes of CSAT every day, you cover PYQs, you integrate it into. Not later than December, I think if you are worried about CSAT, you should start by December, January. That's what I would advise, right? Okay, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming, right? Yeah. Right, MCT, right. See, tests would be released according to schedule. You decide which one to write. If you want to write that test at a later phase, most of the tests are with flexibility. Nobody will force you to write that test on that given day. And you can always do your self-preparation without tests also. If you're going for a test series, all the test series are mostly flexible in nature. There is a timeline within which you have to write. If you go for full year MTS, which starts in July, you have to write all those tests before August. Anytime. So it's flexible in that way, right? Anybody else? See, questions are current oriented, current inspired static, static inspired current, hybrid. So it's very different, and it depends upon whom you ask, right? We have people who say that all questions are geography, because even economy can be geography, even what do you call, IR can be geography. So environment can be geography. Just like that, whether a question is current oriented or not is subjective, because maybe a static question came because this is in news, right? So I believe in paper 2, paper 3, there's a higher dominance in society also, and in physical, in human geography and environmental geography also, it's current oriented. So out of 1000 marks, I think at least 500 marks would be influenced by current affairs, right? Huh. I would not advise 2 pens, because you think it's easy to transition from one pen to the other pen. But every question, it will take half a minute more or 1 minute more, and it will cost you 1 or 2 answers. I had a student, Aparijita Sinsinevar, she scored rank 80 something. She used to write with 3 pens, right? And the moment she went to 1 pen, she completed the paper. It looks attractive. Is having 2 pens an advantage in terms of visibility? Yes. But if it's costing you inability to complete paper, it's bad. You're not understanding the importance of how time cascades. If you're taking 1 more minute to read and interpret every question, it's 20 minutes across the paper. That's probably 2 questions. So most of the time when you take additional time, it's not because of one act, it's because of consistently doing that act across the paper, right? It is advantageous. It depends upon how much time are you giving for it. It also depends upon your past experience of that act, right? If in the past you did it and it helped you, continue. That means you know the right thing to pick, you know the right way to do it. Many people end up spending 3-4 hours a day to read the newspapers and make notes. Then it's a bad idea. Right. Okay, anything else? I can take it after the session, right? Thank you so much. We have expecting 4 to 5 hours for AIM per day. We are expecting that you can do 1 hour of current affairs and 3 hours of optional. Right? Thank you. Thank you.